Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another custom Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, I am breaking down a custom set of Magic cards based around the characters, items, and events from the Captain Mar-Vell movie. This is just one video in a series where I turn every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie into a custom set of cards. I've gone from Iron Man and we've made it up to Captain Mar-Vell, and we are approaching Endgame soon. And so there are a couple things you need to know about the previous sets if you haven't seen them, but there's not much. The only things you really need to understand are that there are new creature types, and the main ones are hero and villain. And obviously heroes go on heroes, villains go on villains. But to save space on the type line, because characters like Thor would have too many types, instead of saying legendary creature with the type of hero, it instead just says legendary hero, and we'll see that when we jump into Captain Mar-Vell's card. And the same is true of villain as well. On top of that, heroes are generally in blue, red, and white, and they occasionally splash into green, and villains are generally in black, blue, and red. So that's pretty much all you need to know. Captain Mar-Vell isn't a sequel to anything, so we don't really need to talk about the previous movie, and yeah, why don't we just jump right into breaking down the cards. Oh, also, if you want to see the full card list, because I'm not breaking down every single card I made because the video would be like 2 hours long, there will be a link to where you can see every single Captain Mar-Vell card. There'll be a link to the main website, and there will be a link to a playlist on my channel where you can see all the other movies and hear me talk about them. The main link to the Magic the Marveling website, which is the big name of this series, has all the movies on it, so if you want to just check out the cards without my commentary, you can also do that. So why don't we jump right into this? Starting off, we have Captain Mar-Vell, Kree Warrior. She's a blue, red, white, legendary creature, Kree Warrior with First Strike. So 3/3 for 3 with First Strike, not bad. There's a new keyword, not a keyword, there is a new creature type, that being Kree, and why don't we see what she does? So whenever Captain Mar-Vell attacks, choose a creature type. For each creature of the chosen type the defending player controls, Captain Mar-Vell gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And then at the beginning of your end step, if Captain Mar-Vell Kree Warrior's power is 10 or greater, transform Captain Mar-Vell. So here's essentially what's happening. We have, she's part of the Kree. She's working to take down the Skrull. So she is very much fighting against an enemy creature type. And so the more your opponent is that creature type, the stronger she'll be because she's kind of learned about that creature type. And if you are facing shapeshifters who have all types in Magic, then you're going to be able to name any creature type and she'll get this really big boost. And then if you're able to boost her power to greater than 10 or 10 as well, you can have her transform. Now, you can have that be boosted by that ability, or you can boost it in some other way. That's kind of up to you. But what happens is you get Captain Mar-Vell Skrull Defender, and it's a legendary hero. So there you can see the creature type of hero, enhanced human, and it has flying, vigilance, and first strike. So a big upgrade here. This is kind of when she fully unlocks all of her power. And then whenever it attacks, choose a creature type. For each other creature of the chosen type you control, Captain Mar-Vell gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So you kind of flip the script on what the other Captain Mar-Vell was doing. The other one was really caring about what your opponents were playing and caring about that, which is a little bit harder to control. But once you do finally get that difficult switch to happen, you get this huge deal, and you can kind of name any other creature. So essentially, if you have Captain Mar-Vell and at least one creature, she's a 6/6 flying vigilance first striker, because you can just name one creature type the other person has. But generally, even if you're playing this in a Kree deck, which, the first side would kind of want you to do, you can then name Kree, and all your other creatures will be Kree. So it kind of works out the other way. Here, she's kind of working with shapeshifters. So if you have a bunch of shapeshifters on your team, she's going to get really boosted. And then she has the ability to pay a red and tap to destroy target artifact. So yeah, generally pretty powerful, doing a lot of different things. It's, you can kind of choose how you want to build this, and I tried to make it very, very open. Captain Mar-Vell was actually a very hard card to design for. I clearly knew I wanted it to be a flip card because we do have two very clear, distinct personas, kind of. Captain Mar-Vell remembers who she is. Captain Mar-Vell doesn't, is kind of a brainwashed Kree warrior. Also, just thing I want to mention here before we get any further, if you check the link below, some of these cards may be different. You can see in the bottom right, this is a new thing I'm doing. There's version. So this is version 0.0.1. So this is still like beta. Every single card will be this version until I release a movie for every, or a card for every movie. And then once we hit that point, it's going to go to version 0.1, and I'm going to update all of the cards, maybe change some wordings, fix some little errors I've caught. So check out the link. There may be differences in the cards. So yeah, check that out. Let's move into the next one. Next one, we have Maria Rambeau. It's a 4-cost blue legendary creature, human pilot, 2/2. And whenever Maria is tapped, target vehicle, you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types. So what's really cool about this is that this is very clearly wanting to crew vehicles, and I think that's very flavorful for the movie. She's a pilot. She even has that creature type, and so, you know, if you tap her to crew a vehicle, you can kind of crew 2 vehicles at the same time, but also you can activate her ability, which is pay 2 and a blue, tap, target player draws a card, then discards their card. And what's cool is you can kind of do that and crew a vehicle. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. These are obviously custom cards, so I thought a lot about Commander when designing them, because I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, where are you most likely to actually use a custom card if you wanted to? Well, Commander, and it is a lot more casual, so you can have more fun ideas compared to something that would need to go into like Modern or Legacy or Vintage or something. So this is very much thought out to be for Commander, and there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it. Next, we have a Yon-Rogg. So he's kind of the villain, and I almost did a flip card for him as well, where he is the hero and then he flips to be the villain, but in reality, that's not super accurate to his character. He is a villain throughout the whole movie. It's just you don't know it. And that's where I really come into like this hard deal, is like, when I'm designing cards, what point in the movie do I take their character? Do I take it based on what they know, what we know in the end, what the movie watcher knows? And so that's really difficult. So we have Legendary Villain, Kree Warrior, 4/4, so a 4/4 for 7 with first strike. But whenever Yon-Rogg deals combat damage to a player, you may gain control of target creature you don't control. So you hit someone, you can gain control of literally any creature on the battlefield, even from someone you didn't hit. And what's really cool is because he has first strike, you're going to kind of steal it before they can block. So if they say block with a creature, you can steal it. Boom, it's no longer blocking. Pretty awesome. I mean, it would have been declared as a blocked creature, so it wouldn't still deal damage, but you can kind of stop certain creatures from, you know, getting killed by blocking creatures. And then you can pay red, tap, and sacrifice an artifact, and Yon-Rogg deals X damage to target creature, where X is the sacrificed artifact's converted mana cost. He can kind of pick up things and throw them at his opponent. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're kind of casting Fling, but for an artifact. And so that's kind of what that bottom ability is. So he is a very awesome character in terms of his card here is pretty cool. There's a lot of different things I could see doing with this. You could not care about his gaining control ability and just use his Fling ability. You can use a mix of both, but I think it is very good. Another thing that I thought about doing was making it so we could steal artifacts and then you could fling them at your opponent, but I didn't really feel that was super accurate. I don't know, maybe, let me know what you guys think about that. Should I add you may gain control of target creature or artifact? Overall, I tried to make sure that this was balanced, but still something you would want to play. It's kind of just a fun little card that you could clearly build around. You can build around making him unblockable, giving him double strike, you know, giving your opponent's creatures and then stealing them back, or doing some weird effect like that. So I think there's a lot of cool things you could do. Next we have Atlas. So this is part of like Star Force, and you'll notice they all have a theme of when you hit your opponent. And so Yon-Rogg has that, and so does Atlas here. It says 4-cost, red, legendary villain, Kree Warrior. As long as you have dealt combat damage to a player this turn, red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And then you can pay 3 blue, tap, return target creature you don't control to its owner's hand. So he can do one of two things. He can either go in for the damage and try and get that trigger off for himself, or he can kind of turn off one of your opponent's blockers by returning it to its owner's hand, and then let one of your other creatures get through and maybe get their abilities off as well. So he's kind of playing the support role, but if he needs to, he can also kind of go in there and fight. We have Bron-Char, which is a 4-cost red legendary villain Kree Warrior, 4/4 with trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, each other opponent loses that much life. You lose half that amount of life. So it is kind of hitting you. He's being kind of reckless, big, just kind of broody character. And I thought this was an interesting way to do it, and a way you could kind of want to even just build around him solo. Maybe you do run Yon-Rogg and then all these Star Force people, or maybe you just run Bron-Char and have a completely separate thing that doesn't even use cards from Magic the Marveling. I just think it's a cool design. Next we have Minn-Erva. It's a 4-cost red legendary villain Kree warrior, 3/1, and whenever it attacks or remove it from combat, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So what's interesting here is this is kind of a removal spell on a creature. It actually doesn't get to deal damage to an opponent. But what it does do is it gets on attack trigger. So if you have anything that cares about when something attacks, you can attack and then not care about it being, killed in combat. And it's she's a sniper. So I think it makes a lot of sense that she's not actually getting into the combat. She's attacking, but she's attacking from a distance. And because sniper, you can maybe take her out pretty easily if you actually do somehow get into combat with her. So, yep, pretty awesome ability. I think it's very, very flavorful. Then we have Ronan of the Accusers. So this is a 5-cost black and red legendary villain Kree warrior, and whenever Ronan is tapped to crew a vehicle, you may sacrifice 2 artifacts. If you do, destroy target land and target creature. Okay, a couple things about this. First, you'll notice a theme. The Kree like to sacrifice artifacts, and I thought that was kind of an interesting difference because okay, a lot of the MCU is based around technology, and this movie is no different. So there's a lot of technology in it. So oftentimes, artifacts are a theme. I mean, look at Iron Man, Age of Ultron. Lots of different movies have artifacts as a theme. I wanted this one to be something slightly different, but still artifacty. And so it's about sacrificing artifacts more specifically, so it works well with a lot of the other cards I have created in this. If you'll notice, we're actually up to 1,000 cards in this set, and it's still expanding. So, yep, whenever he's crewed, you get to destroy target land or target vehicle. Whenever he crews a vehicle, you get to destroy target land and target creature. That is an and. So, for instance, if your opponents don't control a creature, you have to do this. For instance, or even if your opponents control no creatures and no lands, you have to target. It's not a may. You don't have to sacrifice the 2 artifacts, I guess. So, if for some reason you want to crew a vehicle, sacrifice the artifacts, but not get the destroy effect, you can't do that. And if you just want to destroy a creature, not a land, or just want to destroy a land and not a creature, you do have to choose targets like that. So, it is very reckless, and that's kind of the point. He's blowing up planets, so he's destroying a land and creatures, and he's being reckless about it. He does, he's just blowing stuff up, and so maybe one of your creatures or lands is going to get caught in the crossfire. Next, we have some cards that kind of work with him that are in the set. So we have Accuser ship, 5-cost red artifact vehicle with spaceflight. I borrowed this mechanic from Star Wars The Gathering. Every time there's a card with it, I am going to mention that. However, I do use it in a slightly different way. It's just there was no better way. As soon as I saw this, I'm like, yeah, this is how you would do this. So I'm going to credit everything to Star Wars The Gathering for spaceflight. The only difference between his and mine is that I actually have mine as vehicles. His just were creatures with spaceflight. Different choices. In my opinion, it balances a little bit more with the cards I create, but his cards are also pretty awesome. But the ability is tap an untapped artifact you control. Accuser ship gets +X until end of turn, where X is the tapped artifact's converted mana cost. Activate this ability only once per turn. So you kind of tap your biggest, baddest artifact and kind of add a missile to your Accuser ship. And then crew 5, pretty expensive, but if you can manage to have Ronan maybe crew it, you get to then maybe sacrifice something like Kree Ballistic Missile, which is a 1-cost artifact that does nothing until it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, and when that happens, it deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. So yeah, it kind of gives you an incentive to sacrifice the artifact, it gives you something to sacrifice, and gives you a benefit for doing so. Then we have Mar-Vell. It's a 4-cost red and blue legendary creature Kree rogue scientist. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so obviously she was a scientist, made lots of vehicles and Lightspeed engines and all sorts of things, so I think it makes a lot of sense. And then whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 generic. If you do, target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. She's going around trying to discover Lightspeed engine, kind of automating things. She's just kind of a generic scientist in a way, but I think it matches what she's trying to do, kind of coming to a different planet and turning it kind of artifacty. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's a fun one. It's one where, yes, it makes sense logically, and it's a fun one that I could totally see people building commander decks around. Next, we have Talos, who is not actually a villain. He's not a hero, but he's a creature. He's a 3-cost blue and green legendary creature shapeshifter, and he's a changeling, so he's all creature types. I think that makes a lot of sense. Talos enters the battlefield with a villain counter on it. As long as it has a villain counter on it, Talos is a villain in addition to its other types. And then you can pay a green, remove the villain counter from Talos. All creatures you control gain indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. I don't know how great of a commander he would be, but as a card, I think it's very interesting. The villain counter is kind of just some flavor add. This is essentially just a one-time save your creatures, and instead of doing the typical thing where you sacrifice yourself, because Talos didn't sacrifice himself, he just announces he's not a villain anymore. And so this is a flavorful thing, but essentially it's a one-shot, I'm going to save all my creatures from annihilation, and while doing so, becomes not a villain, which means if you're running him in a villain deck, which villain decks generally don't run green, but they could, it does make him less useful to the villains, except for the fact that he's a changeling, so he's always a villain. It's just kind of a flavorful little counter thing. So yeah, it's just fun, interesting way to do it rather than like a charge counter or something. Next, we have Fury, Mar-Vell's ally. It's a 4-cost red legendary hero human agent. So agent's a new creature type added with Captain Mar-Vell and added to past cards as well, because I was like, well, they're not soldiers necessarily. They're not warriors. So what are they? They're not just normal humans either, and I kind of want a way to interact with them. So I decided agent was a good thing for them, and so Fury actually interacts with that. So agents you control have haste, including him, so he's a 3/3/4/4 with haste, and whenever a hero you control attacks, you may pay X and a white, and if you do, that creature gets +X/+X until end of turn. So here we kind of have both hero tribal and agent tribal. Obviously, if you're running him as a commander, I think you're running him as a hero tribal card, because that ability is much better than the all agents have haste, but it is convenient because agents will generally boost heroes, so you may have agents in a hero deck. Next, we have Keller. It's a 4-cost red and white legendary creature human agent 3/3, and this is one of those ones where I'm like, what do I take? Do I take actually Keller? Do I take the shapeshifter version of him? So I kind of did both. He's an agent, so agents you control have first strike. That's a much better ability than Nick Fury, so I could totally see that being a commander. And then whenever a non-shapeshifter you control attacks, it deals 1 damage to each player, again adding to that agent tribal. And then whenever a shapeshifter you control attacks, each player gains 1 life, so he's kind of on both sides of this, but in a different way. The shapeshifters are just trying to survive. The non-shapeshifters are trying to just actually like get rid of the shapeshifters and being a little bit more aggressive. So he kind of represents both parts of how he acts, and he works really well with agents. He works decently with shapeshifters. I don't know if I'd make him the commander, but yes, the first strike is pretty cool and powerful, and of course works with the other abilities. Next, we have Phil Coulson, new agent, 3-cost white legendary creature, human agent, 1/5, and it says agents you control have vigilance. So you have all of them out on the battlefield. They have haste, vigilance, and first strike. And then whenever a creature you control blocks, which is going to happen more because agents have vigilance, you may pay X and a red, and if you do, the blocking creature gets +X/+X until end of turn. So very similar to Nick Fury, but on blocking, he's not going to be as aggressive because he's newer to the field. Next, we have Goose, who's a 1 and a green for a legendary creature, cat, 2/2 with trample, and then you can pay 4 green and tap and put an alien counter on Goose. As long as it has this counter on it, it gets +6/+6 and loses all creature types. So very similar to Talos in terms of caring about like a counter on it, but it's kind of monstrous, but without the monstrous wording. It's kind of that reveal that, oh, Goose really isn't a cat, so that's pretty awesome. And then we have Solar, who was the spy in the movie. He's a 3-cost blue and green legendary creature, Kreese spy. And when he enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent, so he's going to kind of spy on them. He can't attack or block, so he can't be killed in combat. And then you play with the top card of your library revealed, which honestly could be a good thing depending on who you're giving it to, but generally it's just giving you kind of an inside look into your opponent's hand and what they're going to be doing in the future. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Then we have Lightspeed Engine. This isn't necessarily a character like a lot of the other ones have, but it's a major like plot point. It's 4-cost red legendary artifact, and it says creatures you control have haste. If you're having a Lightspeed Engine, haste. But it then says vehicles you control can't be blocked. So your vehicles are going to either be going too fast, or your creatures are going to be able to attack right away because their ship is going to be fast enough. Who knows? Overall, I think it makes sense. It boosts vehicles in a better way than creatures, but it also isn't completely useless to creatures. Also, by the way, that gives vehicles haste as well, because a vehicle becomes a creature when it becomes crewed, so that also helps out there too. Then we have Supreme Intelligence, another legendary artifact, except this one's also a creature. They don't really explain too much what it is. It's probably an AI, but I gave it construct similar to what I gave it Jarvis. So it's a colorless specifically and a red for a legendary artifact creature construct. And it says creatures you control must attack each combat if able, including the Supreme Intelligence, because it's kind of leading the attack a little bit, but not physically, but in this physically, yes. And then you can pay 1, tap, and scry, so you can do that to tap it so that the Supreme Intelligence doesn't have to attack. You're kind of gaining knowledge is also what you're doing by scrying, and that's kind of the entire point of the Supreme Intelligence. And then also the Supreme Intelligence be like, yes, war, fight the Skrulls, and so it's kind of boosting that kind of mentality as well, and I think it's very flavorful. Then we have the Tesseract, which is, again, another kind of major device in this movie. Very similar to the Lightspeed Engine. Almost the same thing, but this one's in blue. It's 2 blue for a legendary artifact, and it says spells your opponents cast that target creatures you control cost 2 more to cast. So essentially, it's going to protect all of your creatures, and then discard a card, target creature gains hexproof until end of turn. So you're going to make your opponent pay more to target your stuff. And then also, you can discard cards to give hexproof. It's a very powerful card in protecting your creatures, but it's not going to win you the game. It's literally just, I'm going to protect my creatures, which is the whole point of it. And, Tesseract is one of the most seen artifacts in this set. It is in, like, Captain America, the First Avenger. It's in the Avengers. It's in, it is kind of represented in Infinity War as well. And, this time it's a very defensive ability, where a lot of the time it is offensive. And then we have the Kree War. This is obviously representing the Kree and Skrull War. 5-cost red artifact, or not artifact, enchantment saga, and it says destroy target non-basic land. And then creatures can't block this turn, and then Skrull War deals X damage each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield that share a creature type with it. So, you're gonna blow up their home, you're gonna make it so they can't, you're gonna hit them where it hurts, and then you're gonna kill everyone who's a shapeshifter. Kree Skrull War, very devastating, but some of your creatures may survive if they're big enough. And then we have lands. These are Hala and Torfa. They're both legendary, and they enter the battlefield tapped unless you control either a Kree or a villain, or a shapeshifter or a hero. And then you can tap, add blue or red, or tap to add green or blue. I've kind of adjusted how the lands work. Any named lands are now legendary, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And that is it for this video. So yeah, those were not all the cards I developed. That's a lot of them, but there's some that are more based around plot points that are probably scrolling past your screen right now. If you want to see more of those cards and see them in detail, and I have a little bit more analysis on my website as well, where I talk about the mechanics found on every single card and tokens and all of that. You guys should check out the link below. If you want to see more awesome content like this, hit that like button. Also check out the playlist full of these. I've obviously done one from every movie since Iron Man. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.